Okay. Hello, everybody. I won't say good morning because I think we've got one person joining us from India, so I think it may be afternoon by now. Um, so I'm delighted to have as our speaker Zaza, Dr. Zaza El Sheikh. I hope you've been able to Google her. She has spoken to us before, but quite some time ago. Um, and I'm sure that whatever she has to say will be extremely interesting. So we've got 34 people online already. So Zaza, can I hand over to you, please?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And what a delight it is to see some faces that I haven't seen for years. So Peter Webster, hello. Haven't seen him in yonks and yonks, and many others. Good to see you again. Some very familiar faces as well. Dave is right that I have been sort of out of the loop for a little bit as my career has taken different directions. And I'll be going into a little bit of that detail in a moment, particularly to benefit the new mediators amongst you. So that you can understand that your mediation skills don't have to be restricted to mediation, straight mediation per se, but you can use your skills, your many skills, in other ways as well. So, Martin, next, please.
Just to say that if anybody, Zaza's going to try and make this as interactive as possible. So if anybody's got any comments or questions, if you can raise your virtual hand and we'll come to you as soon as possible.
Sure. Okay, so that's me for those of you who couldn't be bothered because Dave said there was so much. I don't know about that, but let's move on. So, next, please, Martin. So, we're going to do a number of things today. You know that this is about shame. And really, what's important to me is for many of you who have thought about shame in the context of commercial mediation, for those who haven't thought about it, that this is an opportunity for you to actually think and do it as well. Martin, I'm seeing that the slides on the right-hand side are cut off. Is there any way to have a fuller screen?
Let me see what I can do.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so we'll be looking at some cases. I'll be trying to inform you on some of the things that I've come across in my 19 years of mediating. Next, please, Martin. Here are our learning objectives, really thinking about the various facets to our identities. So, possibly something that you may know or may not know is that I'm very blended in terms of who I am, that I have Jamaican and Sudanese blood in me. Which means that I have a mixture of language, English and Arabic, culture, that's Arab and Caribbean, as well as African, of course, because Sudan is in Africa, but the culture is very Arabic, language is Arabic, as well as a mixture of religions. So my mother was a very strict Baptist, and my father was Muslim. You may be able to see that I've adopted Islam, that I'm quite orthodox. I'm a faith leader as well. I have been mistaken for a nun on a number of occasions, but that's okay. And also to look at the issues in multi-layered commercial scenarios. So many of you may be doing straight down the line commercial disputes, but I tend, because of the nature of my client base, I tend to do quite complicated commercial scenarios, not because there's loads of insurers and different contracts and so on, but that they're family businesses. and also that they're from diaspora communities. Most of my clients are from diaspora communities. Next, please. Just the next bullet. So recognizing and responding to expressions of shame, which is exactly what the title says. That's what's on the tin. Next, please, Martin. Considering the impact of the mediator's cognitive cultural bias. We all have biases, of course. You'll have been to various trainings where you've been invited to acknowledge your biases, and also the risk of projection rather than true empathy. So we'll cover that when we come to the cases. Next. And then actually practicing reframing offensive and shaming statements. So there'll be some laughter, there'll be some challenge, but we're all here to learn. So next, please. So my background, you can see, you may know, is in commercial contract. I mean, I worked with Dave, worked with Peter many years ago as well. Went on to qualify or become accredited in family and workplace as well. So I have a very broad practice. Next. And I also used my mediation skills, so that active listening, being non-judgmental, observing confidentiality in mentoring those who are at risk of radicalization, as well as offenders. So with TACT, we call them Terrorist Act offenses. And the reason for that is also because I'm a faith leader, so I'm able to use my skills previously as a doctor in that sort of therapeutic role, skills as a mediator, skills as a lawyer, etc., all blended in together to do that, as well as my facilitation roles. One of my my specialties that's emerged over the years is that I'm quite into dealing with disputes that involve the state, so the government and their people. So at the moment, I'm working every 4 weeks in Pakistan on a dispute there, and various other countries, as well as the UK. We have the Windrush, and prior to that, it was terror survivors from 2005 and what went wrong, etc., as well as those who died in Tunisia or their loved ones died in Tunisia, in Susa. So various terrorist attacks abroad. Next. And I've already mentioned the faith leader aspect, also very active in the Jewish Muslim space. I'm a chair of an organization. It's a women's network of Jewish and Muslim women, and we're able to talk about the impact of the conflict in the Middle East on us in the UK. They're very difficult conversations, but they need to be had. Next, please. Okay, so now getting into the meat of this session. So to my mind, based on my experience, conflicts will have various elements to them. The context will vary. In my caseload, my clientele, it will be that there will be obviously the law of the land, UK, or depending on where I am, like in Pakistan, the law there. There'll be cultural elements, cultural norms. There'll be religion as well, because some things are okay in terms of religion, okay in terms of the law, but the culture forbids it. Like my very first honor-based, threat of honor-based violence case in 2005, which was triggered by a woman marrying her elder sister's ex-husband. So elder sister's ex-husband, definitely ex, they were divorced. Now the younger sister is married, and in law, absolutely no problem. Religion, Islam, absolutely no problem. But culture, that was against all norms for their culture. And so they threatened to kill her if she came to the house. So in that sense, having a mandate as a mediator wasn't from both parties. It was not viable, if we were talking about commercial conflicts, as we will be today. It may be okay in all of those three, religion, culture, and law, but it's just not viable. In that particular case, it was not viable. A threat of violence was made, police were called, etc. I sent the police away. 8 hours later, same person making the threats is now crying in my lap, which is not culturally acceptable or religiously acceptable. But there it was, that was the conflict. Just clicking one more, Martin. So sometimes you find yourself in this situation where you just don't know what to do. Next slide, please. So in many communities within the UK, and click once more, there are no entry zones. And what I want to talk about here in terms of mediator bias as well is that there have been on a number of occasions, Muslim parties have said to me, no, thank you, we don't want a Muslim mediator, we want a non-Muslim mediator. So that happened in Grenfell. Many of you may know that Bill Marsh and his colleague are mediating that. I was initially recommended, but they said that they wanted somebody who was not Muslim. And the reason for that is that sometimes there's a breach of trust because, I would have expected better from somebody who's similar to me. Or it can be that there's so much shame of what's happened that they don't want to expose that shame in front of somebody from, somebody from that group as well. And so just to really encourage you to not think like I think Dave and I were still working at that time, where somebody said, we can't possibly see this couple. It was a family case, can't possibly see this couple because a divorcing couple because they're Ghanaian and we just don't understand the whole drinks business. So drinks are given as part of a dowry at the beginning of the marriage and seals the marriage contract. We just don't understand that. We don't have experience of that. So therefore we can't mediate. So this is my plea to please, in any mediation, you will be thinking, maybe I don't understand all the facts, maybe I don't understand their references, and that could be in a construction dispute, because it's abroad, for instance, it may not be in the UK, so you may not understand everything. And what are you going to do? You're going to ask questions and you're going to listen. So I would really urge for you, whether you're leading a mediation panel or you're an individual mediator, and don't be put off because you don't understand the cultural, religious, or even legal references. You're there to facilitate and to ask questions and, of course, to listen. Next. And one more. So this is a drawing that is one of my favorite drawings when talking about shame. So Professor James Gilligan, American, he conducted research for 30 years on angry and violent men. He says that he has yet to see a serious act of violence that was not provoked by this experience of feeling shamed, humiliated, disrespected, ridiculed, etc. And you see that there's loss of face. And that's where I come into the commercial mediation. When you have lost money, which of course in any mediation, of course it may be relative. You maybe have lost, a few million out of a billion contract. There's still a loss of face. So why is it that we don't think about shame? Why is it that also we often don't think about mental health in a commercial dispute where, the CEO may say to you, look, when this happened, I felt like jumping out the window. And often as mediators, we might just go straight to, okay, so, what happened next in terms of the numbers? did you lose more money? Did you gain back some of the money that you lost, etc., without actually having that, red flag waving that there could be issues of even mental capacity in terms of this current mediation. Is this person actually fit enough to make decisions about this mediation? Next, please. And one more, and men fear that they're going to be seen as weak. And so often, based on my client base as well, the pendulum will swing all the way to the other end. They become misogynistic. Women often, these are sweeping statements, but often, based on my experience in the past 19 years, fear of being a disappointment. And so then they end up being coerced. And that many a time, this is James Gilligan's research is focused on men. I've had lots of experience of terrorists who are women, murderers who are women, and perpetrators of domestic violence who are women as well. And when you peel it all back, you'll find that actually there's some traumatic experience in their childhood, teenager, early 20s, some traumatic experience where they felt humiliated, and then that translates into some very difficult behavior which lands them in prison often. Next. So now we're going to look at the types of expressions that you might see in a commercial mediation, which maybe you now on reflection think, yes, I do remember that, where emotions are suppressed, a very fixed expression, despite that, feeling worthless, humiliated, etc. They're not crying, but they just have a fixed expression, and they're not really talking about their emotions. Whenever you say, so how did that make you feel? They move very quickly to something else to distract and detract from that. Next, please. Narratives that they may be, quietly spoken. They may also be really loud, and I'll come to that, and only give very brief detail to open questions. Next. And as I mentioned, they can be really defensive. And what do we do in a mediation where somebody is confrontational and intimidating? We might say to them, remind them about the ground rules once, twice, and even the third time we might say, look, I will have to part you. We won't make as much progress if we're not together. But this interruption, being confrontational, etc., is going to be not productive, and certainly is not constructive. And so in that way, I say that you're actually compounding the shame of that person. So that person may have lost a lot of money, they're very defensive, confrontational. And then when you say, look, if you don't stop interrupting, if you don't stop being confrontational, even intimidating, we're going to have to part you, as if it's the naughty boy or girl step. And so I say that compounds shame. So what I would suggest to you very respectfully is to say, look, let's say it's Amanda, yeah? Look, Amanda, we can see that you've got some very important things to say, and we'd really like to hear you properly. So I wonder if you could sit down, or I wonder if you could explain to us, in a lower tone of voice, exactly what's happened. Yeah. And then that way it doesn't change. Relationships are where vulnerability could be exposed are definitely avoided in my experience. So for instance, if you were to recommend that people work together, even in the mediation, let's come together, work together on particular issues to ventilate them, see if, the 2, 3, 4, 5 of you, however many of you can reach some kind of breakthrough. You'll find that if there is a personal relationship, so they have worked together and it's developed into a personal relationship as well as the professional one, that they'll really push back at that, and they'll prefer to be in shuttle mediation. Next. Decision making, again, they would prefer something that is entirely tangible rather than, let's see how you work together. For instance, if it was workplace, in commercial, why don't you spend some time together talking about this beyond the mediation space? The mistrust just doesn't allow that, and so they keep coming back to you as a mediator to be able to make any progress. Next. So, reframing, you might remember a few minutes ago that we talked about how we'd be proceeding with this, and you'll get some practice, so you'll be really interactive in a moment. So detoxifying offensive shaming statements, focusing on interest, so refocusing on their interest, avoiding using the foul words or the offensive words that they've just expressed. Next. So, for instance, here we are. This is over to you now. So this might feel very uncomfortable, but it is definitely a quote, something that was said back in the day that me and Dave were working together in community mediation in particular. So there are too many African refugees here and our country is being ruined. How do you reframe that? Over to you. And there's no shame in getting it not perfect. Yes, Jeremy.
That's lovely to see you. I hear you are concerned at loss of control of the country as you were used to it.
Sure, great. Yes, absolutely. Even going another level up might be, I can hear that your country is very important to you, and people being the same is important to you too. Yeah, that's also a possibility. Very, very good. Next, Martin. Thank you, Jeremy. So, white privilege is why you will never be able to understand me. It's so unfair. Anyone other than Jeremy? Not that you didn't do a brilliant job, Jeremy. Come on, no shame in it. Come on.
Maybe I understand that you think I can't hear you. Please help me to explain how I can.
Lovely, lovely. That's great. Even Hugh, it could be that I hear or I understand that there've been difficulties before in you feeling understood. Please help me to understand what I can do to help. Yeah. So
I'm sorry, I'm just a cloud. There's something gone wrong with my camera, I think. My face doesn't appear. I apologize for that.
Okay.
I don't know what the problem is.
I saw a glimpse of it when you turned it off. So thank you very much indeed, Hugh. Any questions about that before we move to the cases? About reframing, about the importance of reframing sentiments, statements that can cause somebody to feel shame, even the mediator to feel a bit ashamed, a bit embarrassed, a bit humiliated. So you'll imagine that when I was the one with the African refugees, I was a mediator there. It was a little bit awkward. So yeah, you know, as mediators, we also have to put our own identities aside to be able to move forward and continue in that independent, unbiased approach. So, for instance, I've had somebody say to me that, you know, this was in 2010, so forgive me if you've heard this story before, that on the phone, it appears that I don't sound Muslim. Don't know what that sound would be, but you know, somebody said that you know, I just wanted to give you the heads up that the other side, this was a landlord-tenant dispute, that the other side is Muslim, and I don't know how much experience you have of dealing with Muslim people, but they can be jolly slippery. So don't believe a word he says. And so for a moment there, I went into hand wringing just for a couple of seconds. And then I came back very warmly saying, that's okay. I've got plenty of experience of dealing with Muslim people, so it will be fine. Yeah. These are the things that mediators sometimes face, particularly over the phone in those days. This was in 2010, used to, you know, reach out to the parties by phone. So if there are no questions, let's go forward then. Let's go to the cases, please. Okay, so if you bring it all up, please, Martin. So we have Mr. Khan, Mr. Smith. We've got this, Mr. Khan is a sole owner of Yum, a London-based restaurant. Mr. Smith, who had been the chef for 20 years, has said that he's very keen to proceed to buy Yum that Mr. Khan is selling. And in reliance on that sale to Mr. Smith, Mr. Khan has proceeded to purchase a property development business, so another business for £1 million, knowing that this is just a matter of time, that he'll be able to exchange contracts now and then complete when Mr. Smith completes with him. But Mr. Smith, as a strong Catholic, has said that actually, no, I would prefer to purchase a large soup kitchen to feed the homeless in Glasgow. And Mr. Khan's solicitors suggest mediation because there appears to be some level of verbal contract. Is there, isn't there? Going to court, what might happen? What, you know, in legal terms, what was the conduct? Is there anything implied that there was a legally binding contract or not? That kind of thing. So I don't know, Martin, if you have breakout room facility or whether time will not allow. We could give maybe 3 minutes, or we can just do it here. Probably just doing it here sounds more sensible. That people just put up their hands and give some thoughts as to what's going on here and what solutions we might be able to see coming out of this dispute. What terms of settlement can you imagine? So, hands up, please.
I'm not sure that we can do virtual hands while this is on the screen. So if anybody just unmutes themselves and just makes any comments, that'll be fine.
Dr. Ashik.
Yeah.
This is Bill. Now, I find this quite difficult right from the word go, because if this was by word of mouth and there was nothing written between Mr. Khan and Mr. Smith, the question in my mind would be, how do I even start this? Because Mr. Smith can practically just do what he wants to do. There was nothing written. He will just take what he had in his pocket and get onto a train into Scotland and do what his faith was actually pulling him towards. If you get what I mean. especially coming from a faith perspective, a faith point. Things faith are not easy to discern sometimes unless you've been talking with somebody for quite a long while, so that you understand how far they are in their faith. And we have a totally different culture, faith kind of background here with Mr. Khan. Could be a Muslim, could be probably a Hindu, and here we got Mr. Smith, who is a Catholic. I don't understand. It's just a question.
Yeah, sure. So what does faith say? If we were just going to look at a faith lens, what does faith say about keeping promises? Yeah. Was it a promise? He said that he was very keen to proceed. Yeah. So these are all questions to explore. Jeremy.
Yeah, we're just taking it for granted that faith is an issue here immediately. And before exploring faith, my word is my bond kind of things and traditions, I would want to check whether or not that actually is part of the paradigm. And just because people have got names indicative of a background doesn't make them observant.
Sure. I mean, I've put in the third bullet that he was Catholic, so it may not be, Marcia.
Yeah, nice to see everyone. I'm wondering about the relationship between the two, because Mr. Smith's been a chef there for 20 years. So what's that relationship like? Why that has broken down? Or is Mr. Khan a newer owner and that's part of the dynamic of that relationship? That was my thought when I reread this.
Sure. There's also that. So things to explore, how long have they worked together? Is this relationship 20 years, or is it just that Mr. Smith worked there for 20 years? There's the financial as well to think about. What loss is there? Is there any financial loss? Why is there a financial loss? Have contracts been exchanged? Is it too late to back out for Mr. Khan? Does he have any other sources of income to be able, or capital to be able to complete on the purchase independently of this sale? Could they look for somebody else to buy it to get Mr. Khan out of a hole, so to speak? Any other thoughts before I move on with reframing a statement that was made?
I suppose you could explore whether there's any way that the profits from the London-based restaurant could financially help to support the soup kitchen in Glasgow.
Absolutely, yes, and that was something that we explored because yes, the truth was that that Mr. Khan was the first owner of this. They'd set it up together. That Mr. Smith had been the chef for the past 20 years. They operated very much like a partnership, although it wasn't a partnership, but decisions were made together. There was no capital that was injected as a partner, no shares in terms of Mr. Smith. Mr. Khan was the sole owner and hadn't given any shares to Mr. Smith. But the way that they worked and their personal relationship that had grown over the 20 years meant that, this was quite a, not complicated, but there were many layers to it. Next, Martin. So now I would like you to reframe this. Can everybody see the statement, or shall I read it out? I treated you like a brother and I trusted you completely. But here we are, you've just proven it. You people have absolutely no understanding of honor. I should have known better. So let's hear, what do people think of that? Let's see if people who haven't spoken yet, so other than Hugh, Marcia, Bill and Jeremy, I know you're probably itching to say something. that if there's anyone else, it would be great to hear from you.
Hi, can I speak?
Yes. Hey, Bela.
Hi. So this puts me in mind of the type of transactions that went on in the jewelry trade when their word was their bond, and they just shook on it and said a couple of words which meant good luck. And that was very much a thing at a certain point in time. And it sounds like this is Mr. Khan speaking, and he's working off a similar sort of ethos. What's the and it is two different cultures that he's bringing out here. Whether or not that is relevant is besides the point. That is besides the point.
It sounds like it's relevant by what he's saying, you people.
Well, he's making that a relevant thing, but whether it's actually relevant in law,
sure,
is something completely different. And not everybody is necessarily acting with the same ethos, I would say, in this particular instance. So you know, a person withdraws from buying a house at the last minute, and there's no deposit. You've lost all that time. The law is not that I trusted you. The law says there needs to be something written down. But as a mediator, you would go into the things that you were just saying just now, which is the loss, any loss. And I think work on that tack really.
Okay, great. Anybody thinking about the relationship?
Hello. Hello. I probably think they're kind of very important words there, like trust. So as a mediator, you'd want to explore what trust means for both sides.
Yes, absolutely. Definitely. And in terms of this statement as just, there's been this explosion from Mr. Khan's mouth. I don't know if you agree or not, whether this would be a sign of shame, of naivety, moving from this case for a moment, scams, there are increasing number of scams. I was listening to the radio this morning, heard that every 10 seconds, Brit is scammed. And, that can also involve a lot of feelings of shame, self-reproach, even self-hate. Older people, younger people, love scams, all sorts are going on. And when you realize that you've been naive, I think that can really push people into this space of feeling ashamed. Whether it's a deal that's gone wrong, a multi-million deal, whether it's a few thousand, there can be this feeling of, I should have known better. So let's have a go at reframing this now. So you want to detoxify. This has just been said. Mr. Smith is recoiling. What do you mean by you people? We've been business associates, we've built this restaurant together, we're friends, and now you're saying you people? What's that about? So anybody got any idea?
Ideally, would you not tackle you people in terms of terminology, but reflect back on the relationship? So the underlying message is, I've really valued the relationship. I've trusted you completely. So is an entree as a starting position, not to react to the language, but to reflect on the relationship. Say, I really value our relationship and I really value your trust, and build from there. So actually try and connect to their relationship and take it away from you people or very broad sweeping statements, but anybody other than the two of them and their relationship.
Perfect, Susan. Absolutely perfect. So, you know, one of the thoughts as well is that, as you say, you know, using the relationship as that platform, that springboard from which to move to the financial loss, if there has been any, all of that, to look for potential solutions, which were mentioned a couple of minutes ago, you know, whether the proceeds, whether various things could be thought about. And as you say, as the mediator, it would be that, you know, what I hear from you, Mr. Khan, or I'm sensing, whichever way you want to express it, is that the relationship between you and Mr. Smith was incredibly important to you. Yeah. And then move to the commercial stuff. Yeah. And thank you, Jeremy, as well, for your contribution. That's great. Okay. Nick.
I just say a quick word as well.
Yes,
Just,
go on.
it occurs to me that Mr. Smith and Mr. Khan are both actually wanting to do very similar things. Mr. Khan's moving out of the restaurant business into the property development, and Mr. Smith obviously has been given this news, and he thinks, well, yes, this is my chance to take over Yum and so on. But then he thinks, actually, maybe I should be changing tack a little bit as well and do something different and do things I've always wanted to do. And maybe that's really where the common ground between them is, that they're actually proceeding in very similar ways to each other.
Great.
They're not, it's not this lot of people and that lot of people. There's a lot of similarity between them. I don't know if you can steer them towards that as a mediator, but
yeah,
it does occur to me looking at it.
Definitely transition. You know, you're both at a transition in your lives. They were men in their late 50s by the time that they came to me. So yeah, you know, it looks like you're both in transition, that you're wanting to change what you've been doing for the past 20 years to do something else, which you enjoy. You know, that could also be something that would draw on the commonalities. Bill.
Yes, Saza. Now, and this is a question, and it's not a reframing thing. Is it possible, maybe the way I would like maybe to move forward with this mediation, is it possible to actually see whether, and I'm saying this because of what you had earlier on talked about mental health, within this soup of mediation, is it probably that we are looking at a transactional relationship between these two people, that it was not so much a friendship thing these 20 years they had together, but a transactional kind of relationship between the two because of what either of them were getting out of each other, and not actually friendship.
Sure. It's
because it just came out of the blue for Khan.
It's possible, but based upon somebody saying, you know, both cases are real mediations that I've done. So based on that, I would say that, you know, what has been said here is that, you know, I treated you like a brother and I trusted you completely. So there is definitely more to this than just the transactional, let me see if I can get the business now, or, you know, actually I'm just here as an employee, you know, I've got a right to move on. Obviously, everybody's got a right to move on, you know, as long as their terms have been agreed. But yeah, it could also be what you were saying, but because these are cases that I've mediated and this was actually said, yeah, I'm able to say that, yes, there was a deep and meaningful relationship as well. Great. So Martin, could you bring up the next one, please? Okay, so now this is an inheritance case, just a little bit more complicated for you on this morning. Get the juices flowing. So we have Jacob, who alleged that his late father, Menachem, actually unfairly excluded him from his will because, so he linked it to, the causation was that Jacob had denounced Judaism before becoming a Buddhist. So Jacob is in his 30s, early to mid 30s. Within 7 months of his father's death, Jacob issued an English civil claim against his father Menachem's estate, as to basically saying that it was unfair on the grounds of his religion for him to be excluded, so discrimination. And it was a large estate. If memory serves me correctly, it was 6.5 million. So much to her embarrassment, Miriam, Jacob's mother, has recently confided to Jacob that Menachem was actually not his father, not his biological father. So imagine that this comes through to your desk, yeah? And it's not just an inheritance, which clearly there'll always be a good dose of emotion there, people feeling that they've been unfairly treated. But when you also have something as delicate as the parentage as well, that can just add to the complexity and the sensitivity. So here we are. You've been appointed, you're in this mediation now. What are you thinking? What are you going to explore before I ask you to reframe the next statement?
If I may?
Yes, go ahead.
It sounds to me like this is not about money at all. This is about who the father-son relationship, isn't it? And that needs to be explored before any inheritance issues get into, because the inheritance is a proxy for the relationship.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's very possible. And when you say father and son, we now have a situation where they're not father and son. Yeah.
Yes.
So yes, lots of question marks. Yeah.
I was going to say, for me, the word that springs to mind is belief. There's a lot of belief here. Jacob believed that his dad excluded him because of, there's a lot of belief about assumptions made about things from reading this.
Okay. Yes. Any other thoughts?
Well, I suppose, I mean, this is a more legal point, but it might help if there's a resolution that the fact that Jacob may not have been the biological son of Menachem, if he was treated as a child of the family, then under English law, actually, there wouldn't be very much difference between their two respective positions.
Sure. Absolutely, and that's exactly what his lawyers, Jacob's lawyers, advised him, that look, if you were to go to court about this, it's not really going to make any difference whether you're the biological son or not. In terms of the religious discrimination point, does anybody have any thoughts about that? So I'd like to hear some other voices before I start picking people.
And I'll speak. Hello, good morning. I think I'd want to explore the reasons why Jacob denounced Judaism and becoming a Buddhist. And for me, because I don't know much in depth about either, I would want to know if there are some similarities in terms of the religion and whether that was something to explore, the different religious beliefs. So yes, I a bit on what I think you said. I think whether he's a biological son or not is a bit of a red herring, actually, for me. I think the key thing is about being excluded from the will.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Being excluded is a very significant factor here. And when people are excluded, what might they feel? You will know this by now. They might feel ashamed. It might be as little as embarrassment, midway humiliation, but they might actually feel really ashamed. Ashamed that their mother has had another relationship other than with their father. They might feel ashamed because they've been excluded from the will, different reasons to feel shame. There may be, yes, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say it might be interesting to explore what the father and son's relationship was coming up to how he felt excluded.
You also need to find out if there are other family members involved rather than just the mother and the son. There could be other family members involved whose interests might be affected by any challenge to the will. And if there isn't any difficulty insofar as the other family members are concerned, then that might facilitate some kind of a resolution. And there's a phrase from King Lear, how sharper than a serpent's tooth it is to have a thankless child. Was that the motivation of the father? You need to explore that. You need to find out whether the other family members have the same feeling as the father had. Is there that religious break? Is there any understanding? Because unless there's understanding on both sides, you're not going to have the foundation for a successful mediation.
Sure, absolutely. And as we're running out of time now, I'm going to fast forward us just to give some pointers to what happened. So for Jacob, there was also an additional level to this where the money was very important to him and the sense of justice was very important to him, of course, as well. Additionally, there was also the absolute terror that he felt about not being able to marry a particular woman that he was betrothed to in old terms, engaged to in new terms, so to speak, because of the way that Jewish communities would consider him. So him being Buddhist was, I don't want to say bad enough, but you know what I mean. Absolutely no offense to anybody Buddhist. I'm just talking from their point of view that, that was enough to have to overcome to be able to marry this Jewish lady. But for him to be, in very old language, illegitimate was catastrophic for this particular community, that the marriage wouldn't be able to proceed. And I don't know if any of our members today who are Jewish can relate to this. There is a term for it, but I've forgotten what the term is. I was taught to that term in that particular mediation. And so, it was very sad. Mamza. It was very sad, very tragic, that this came about. And one would have wanted and hoped that, oh, come on, when was this case? This was in 23. We're in 2023 now. Come on, let's move past this. But of course, somebody from, who also understands how cultural, religious connotations can be so important to even people who are not practicing Muslims. The case that I mentioned right at the beginning about the two sisters, one marrying the ex-husband, there was tongue in cheek, there wasn't a prayer mat in sight in that house, yes? But those cultural blended with religious norms can be so, so important. So I'm going to move us to, and to also say that it did settle, and that Mariam did give somewhere between 50 and 60,000 pounds a year to Jacob. She kept the estate, but she gifted him through a trust, 50 to 60,000, I can't remember the exact figure. But I want us just to, please, Martin, go to the next one, please, which is the shame about fidelity. So you've always hated me, and now I know why. My poor father didn't know that he was married to a bleep. So how do we reframe? We just have a few minutes left, so I'd encourage you to speak up. 3-4 minutes. I'll suggest then that, you know, I can see that honesty is really important to you. And then moving on from that to open up that conversation between Mariam and her son. Mariam did disclose that Menachem did know that Jacob was not his son because Menachem had a medical condition and the treatment for that meant that he couldn't conceive. So he did know about it. He was glad to have a son, you know, the figure of a son, even though he knew that it had come from an affair. Yeah, so those things came through, that actually Menachem really loved Jacob and that it was only his religious choice, and also that his mum never hated him but just felt awkward perhaps about him. And there was lots of apologies, lots of tears, etc., etc. So last slide, please, Martin, which is just some references if you ever want to look up more about shame in commercial mediation, that there is an article written by Katrina Bartis, because my shame is that I'm hopeless at writing unless it's a report. Great on reports, but writing something just non-fictional is quite daunting for me. So that's my shame, that there's so much that I'm able to do. Public speaking is no problem, but writing is. So whenever you do come across any written stuff, it will be by somebody else about my work. And I've recently become a senior fellow in Zurich as well. That's my favorite work destination. So Katrina has been working in Zurich for many years at the mediation support network there. And we also spoke about Professor James Gilligan and his research in terms of shame. There are many, many articles written by his wife as well as him. So Carol, his wife, deserves a very good mention as well, because she's been at his side writing and contributing to his research as well. So thank you so much. I know that we've got a minute left. I'm very happy to hang on for another 5 minutes or so if there are any other comments. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much for that, Zaza. Really interesting presentation. Could you just mention about BEMA for those who maybe don't know about it?
Yes, of course, of course. So Belief in Mediation and Arbitration, BEMA, BIMA, which is also the British Islamic Medical Association. So that was me just hankering for my medical former life. Yeah, BIMA, for those who may understand, that was my silent handshake to my Jewish brothers and sisters, because I'm very interested in the origins of religion. Bima is where the Torah is read from, so the pulpit, so to speak, in other terms. And so I wished to call it Bima, and there were very many co-founders as well. People like Roger Levitt might be here as well, I'm not sure. And so, yes, we founded this, and the inspiration for founding Bima was that the case that I told you about, the landlord tenant, where somebody said, you know, that, you know, Muslims very slippery, don't believe a word they say. And then when they saw me the next morning at Central London County Court, I was very glad that I'm a doctor, because the person looked as if they were going to pass out, particularly when his wife, so the landlord's wife, said to him in an audible whisper, wouldn't it be awful if that were the mediator? And he snapped back at her, don't be so silly. I told you that I spoke with her last night. Of course, that's not the mediator. But yes, it was. So, you know, it's a favorite story of mine, you know, absolutely true, couldn't make it up. And at the time, just as well, food for thought, and what I was saying earlier about diversity of mediators, that I, at the time, said to my colleagues, Dave was one of those colleagues, Dave Owen was one of the colleagues, and there were 8 or 9 of us at the time, that, you know, I shouldn't go ahead and mediate this. Somebody else should come and mediate, should take my place and mediate it. My colleague at the time, Kathy Torman, said that I should report him to the CMC, etc., etc., etc. And I was like, how is this going to resolve anything? So that's how I ended up walking towards prejudice, which is something else that I talk about a lot. And the case settled, and all that it was about was that when the landlord went to inspect the leaking skylight, which was the reason that the tenant was unhappy, that the tenant asked the landlord to remove his shoes. And the landlord took huge umbrage to that and said, you know, am I not clean enough to come into my own property? And that was the trigger for a couple of 100,000 dispute due to rental arrears, etc., etc., etc. So yeah, so that's the source of Bima, that we focus on resolving disputes between and within faith communities, and we have breakfasts every couple of months, Bima breakfasts. Online, similar to this, and we talk about scripture-based dialogue. So we have dialogue, people will present their scripture on a particular topic. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Asa. I think we've got time for one comment or question, if anybody's got one, please.
Mediator to Jacob. I love it. Love it, Jeremy. And thank you for all the thanks that I've seen in the chat as well. That's very, very kind of you.
Five seconds if you want to make a comment or raise a question.
If I may, so I think I feel on behalf of everybody present here, you know, a big thank you. This was so informative and so useful. I've done a mediation course on cultural differences, but getting this so out of hand for you from practice, you know, like there's a lot of learnings to take home. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome, Bart, most welcome. And I know that there are some new mediators here. So Dave, if you wanted to go on to ask those people to introduce themselves. And
yes, I will. Just before that, to say that the next meeting is going to be on Wednesday, the 24th of September, when Derek Marshall KC is due to be our speaker. I'll save the date round for that soon.